Over the past few months, there's been a lot of videos on YouTube about chess gambits. Gambits are when you sacrifice material early on to get a very dangerous position for your opponent, potentially even winning within the first 10 moves. And I figured that I would put all the gambits together that have been on YouTube, but also just the more classic ones, into one video. And the point is to give you weapons with white and with the black pieces. If there's anything I miss or you want me to go into more detail, just leave it in the comments below. I read a lot of your comments, trust me, and I would love to hear your feedback. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. We're going to start with the white pieces. You can use the timestamp on the video player to jump around and see what's relevant to you. First things first, we're going to look at the king's pawn. Obviously, this is the classic, and when you play the king's pawn, you're most likely going to face e5 and c5. So let's start with e5. Now, everybody's most classic and favorite, and if you haven't seen it, is the king's gambit. The very kind of immediate giveaway of the pawn on the f-file, and the point is that if this happens, you have to play the move knight to f3, and the point is to stop queen h4, and now you are going to play d4, knight c3, recapture the pawn, and in a perfect world where black plays really, really passively, you will have a position like this, and then you will play like bishop out, castle. And in the long run, the open f-file oftentimes will be very dangerous for black. They'll have pressure on f7. You should look for a central pawn break very quickly. But the king's gambit immediately is pretty dangerous. You have very creative options if they take it. You know, even like I said, something like something called the Muzio Gambit, where you can sacrifice your knight if black plays g5, g4, and this can lead to a seriously, seriously dangerous position for black. But you're relying on them taking. And if they don't take you, and if they play d5, you have to know what you're doing. And this is something that I would recommend you looking at a more theoretical video on. It's a little bit too dangerous as far as I'm concerned, but it can lead to very aggressive and dynamic play. There's also knight c3, which is called the Vienna system. And here, if they play knight f6, then you play f4, and now this is called the Vienna Gambit. And the point is that you've included these two moves. You guys know I love the Vienna. I recommend the Vienna a lot for beginners. The point is that now you don't need to play knight to f3. You can just play e5, hitting the knight. And the knight has to go back. Every other square is occupied, and now this is kind of a much better king's gambit, because black has played two moves of knight to f6 and then knight back. Now you're going to play d4 recapture, and you'll have a much better position. But again, the best line is to strike back in the center, and you have to know what you're doing. I have a video called How to Crush People with e4, where I kind of show the main line of the Vienna. Maybe I will make a Vienna video at some point. You can also play the delayed King's Gambit, which is essentially this. It's still the Vienna Gambit, but the point is, again, that you're sacrificing here to get this big center. Give it a shot if you'd like. The other thing about e4, e5, is you have the other gambit. So you have not this pawn, you can give the central pawn away. And you can do this right now. I believe this is called the Danish Gambit. And essentially, if they take, you can give away another pawn. And if they take, you can take with the knight and just develop all your pieces very rapidly to the most active squares, bishop, knight, and so on. But you can actually play bishop c4 and gambit a third pawn. So you can let them take 3 of your pawns. And this is incredibly dangerous. I mean, for black. Black really has to know what they're doing. Again, oftentimes the best move is to strike back in the center with d5. But if they don't know what they're doing, you'll play queen to b3, you'll hit the f7 pawn, and you'll just overwhelm them. You'll get the knights out, you'll castle very quickly. And, you know, at the beginner level, 2-pawn disadvantage this early in the game really isn't felt. They really won't feel that they're up 2 pawns when they're constantly under the threat of checkmate. Now, you can do the 3-pawn sacrifice or just the 2-pawn sacrifice, or you can play more classically with knight to f3. Now, knight f3 is obviously just like the main of the main moves, and you're relying on them to play knight to c6, and now you can play d4 again, and if they take, you can play something called the Scotch Gambit, which is with bishop c4. So it's essentially with d4, and then, again, they would have to take, and you would move on with your life. You would continue development quickly, but in many cases, the best move for black is the move d5. In positions where you don't want to play d4, you want to play bishop c4, now we have 2 remaining gambits, well, 3 really. One doesn't really count. One is the Jerome Gambit. After bishop takes f7, king f7, knight e5, knight e5, and queen to h5. The Chess Bros did a video on this. There is a little bit of theory here. It is kind of tricky, and Hikaru actually used this in his garbage opening speedrun and beat a Grandmaster multiple times with it. So you can look that up. The point is that you sacrifice 2 pieces, you get your queen out, and black actually has to come forward to guard this knight, and it could be a little bit dangerous. I don't know the exact move order that's correct here. It's the most accurate, but essentially, you know, anybody with a king in the center will really feel the pressure here and will not be very happy. The other gambit is the Evans Gambit. Now, I've made a video on this, so again, this is all out there. All this information is out there. The Evans Gambit is great. The point is that you want them to take this pawn and then play c3 and d4 and overwhelm them in the center of the board. I really like the Evans Gambit. Actually, the Evans Gambit is used by engines, which means that they like it and it's backed by them. And yeah, I feel like the most professional of these is probably the Evans Gambit, but the Vienna Gambit, I've beaten many Grandmasters with in Blitz, and it's, you know, I'm willing to try it out in Classical as well, all those Vienna positions. So that's as far as e4, e5. Again, if I missed anything, you guys let me know. Now we're going to turn our attention to the thing that you're going to face the second most, which is the Sicilian. And here again, your gambits include the 2 sides of pawns. So b4, cb4, and something like a3 is called the wing gambit. And again, you just want them to clear out the pawns and then just get very aggressive. Take the center, put your pieces out on their most active squares. And if black plays e6, now they don't have the right to castle anymore. And what I recommend in my e4 course is the delayed wing gambit. And oftentimes black here will play the natural knight c6. And one of my favorite variations here is b4, take, take, take. And then you build up a huge center, c3, knight c6, d4. And again, many cases, I like to put the next pawn and just massive center, just knight f3, bishop d3, and it would just go crazy. And you know, at the cost of these 2 pawns, again, the advantage of the pawns is not felt when you're constantly overrunning them. One variation I will almost guarantee you will get if you get this position on the board is d5, take, queen d5, and now the brilliant knight to a3. The point is to go knight b5 and try to jump in there, and it's very difficult to stop. a6 doesn't even stop it because of the pin. And if knight f6, knight b5, and they just go back, you win with d5 here. I've won probably 20 games at least online against titled players with this because of all these tricks. If they take, you sack the queen and this, and you're just dominating here, trying to get, you know, into c7 here with the bishop as well. So I can almost guarantee you that this will happen if you play the delayed wing gambit. And a3 is a little bit more committal. Sorry, b4 is a little bit more committal than a3. I like a3. It's a waiting move. We see how black is going to develop. And then if black doesn't play the way we want, we can play knight c3 and bishop c4. And then the big one, the Smith-Morra Gambit. So d4, cd4, and c3. You will find millions of hours of content of the Smith-Morra out there, but again, it's very similar to the Danish Gambit, where e4, e5, and if you'd really like to get creative, you can sacrifice a 3rd pawn, but the difference is that they haven't moved the e-pawn, so e6 here will block out your bishop, and you don't have as big of an advantage as you would in the Goering Gambit or the Danish Gambit. So the Smith-Morra is insanely popular. A lot of people don't even take it, they just give you the pawn back, and then they develop. So there's a lot of content out there on the Smith-Morra, but you know, that's as far as the Sicilian goes. The French defense, it's hard to find a gambit. There's one gambit that's really funny called the Orthoschnapp, and the point is to go c4. Now you rely on black to play d5. I mean, if black decides to play c5, you can't play it, but the point is d5, and now take, and queen to b3. Eric Rosen made a very good video about this on YouTube. And the point is, again, if de4, which I believe is actually the best move, beginning players can have serious difficulties guarding the f7 square. And, you know, you'll develop very quickly. Knight e2 castle, maybe knight c3. In a lot of positions, you can just get very rapid development, a quick castle, and black can be in a lot of trouble. But this is it's not good. I don't recommend it. A gambit that's a little bit better here is something like b3, d5, and bishop b2, called the Papatikulat, or the Horowitz Gambit. And the point is that you give away this, and you try to castle queenside very fast. What I also recommend in my course. I know you guys sometimes don't like when I plug the course a lot, but I'm just saying that I would make an openings course based on these lines. If you're going to make folks pay for content, you need to give them high quality stuff. Well, not always. I mean, I suppose you can have clothes that rip or something, but you know, you get what I'm saying. It's that I like these lines with queen to e2 and then long castle. I think they're very dangerous for black and oftentimes can result in, you know, some crazy attacking chess. So I like these gambits. You know, against the Scandinavian and the Caro-Kann, these two, there's, for example, against d5, you can play knight f3. This is called the Tennyson Gambit. It's not very good, but the point is that you want to play knight g5, and you want to hit this and play bishop c4 in the future. It's trappy, maybe there's some content out there, but if they play the Scandinavian, I mean, frankly speaking, you should just take. But what I'll recommend against the Caro-Kann and the Scandinavian is to play d4 and just go into what's called a Blackmar-Diemer Gambit. Now, there's some videos of this on YouTube, but the point is that here gambiting the second pawn is great, and oftentimes you can take with the knight, but even the queen. And it's too dangerous for black to get this pawn. I mean, black really has to know what they're doing, and you can very quickly get an open game. You can develop all of your pieces as fast as possible, long castle with the d-file, and again, it's up to you. If you're brave, we want to give 2 pawns away, by all means do that, and go on a big, you know, attacking rampage. Against the Caro, like I said, what you can do against the Caro is you know they're going to go d5, so play like knight c3, they'll take, and now you'll go f3. Now you've kind of tricked them into playing into your gambit. The difference actually is the c6 pawn. You know, in the other version, they can put a knight here, but with the Caro-Kann, they've already put a pawn on c6. So if you're going to go into a Scandinavian and gambit this, they haven't actually played this move, so it's to black's benefit that you're playing this kind of Blackmar-Diemer style. One last gambit that I'll show you is against Caro, is maybe the hillbilly attack with d5 and bishop back to b3. If d takes e4, you have queen h5. And again, you're going for this. Black, I mean, the best move is g6, but in general, if black goes here and then attacks your queen, just keep the queen around on h4 or bring it back to e2 and try to win this pawn quickly. You want black to block in this bishop so that you'll get a quick lead in development and black won't know what hit him, especially a Caro player. They really don't like these hillbilly attacks. And I really think that kind of concludes our study of e4. If I missed anything, let me know. Now, with d4, your gambits are pretty limited. I'm not going to lie to you, my friends. Your gambits are pretty limited. Against any Dutch with f5, I would recommend e4. This is the Staunton Gambit. I play this. This is in my repertoire. The point is that if they take, first of all, you can try this. It's not going to work, but you can go check here and pre-move this move, making it seem like you hung your queen. And then if they take your queen, this is mate. Actually, my most viewed Twitch clip ever is me debating a guy like this, and you can get a win like that. But that's, you know, crap, and it's probably not going to work. The best thing to do is to go knight c3, knight f6, and bishop to g5 to try to take this and put the queen out here, or bring out the bishop. Staunton Gambit, named after Howard Staunton. The point is that, the point is that after knight c3, d5, now this move is a lot better because you are going to win the pawn on d5. So the Staunton Gambit is extremely dangerous. Obviously, we have the classical Queen's Gambit. I made a video on this. I mean, you could take this in a million different directions. Watch the d4 rating climb. Watch, you know, the d4 guide, the Queen's Gambit guide that I put out. It's just a very classic opening, and it's not like super dangerous for black. It's just, I mean, it's a good opening. It's a mainline opening, and it's something that you can play. If you want to go wild, what you can try to do against knight f6, this is called, oh my god, I completely forgot the name. It's the Gibbons-Weidenhagen Gambit, but basically, the point is to give away the g-pawn, and if they don't take it, to obviously go g5. Look, I started talking about the gambit, and there's sirens outside now. So g4, and if they take, you go e4, and you just take the center. Just take the center, get all the King's Indian players out of their comfort zone, Grunfeld players, Benoni players, just g4. It's not very good, but I would recommend it if you're, you know, kind of crazy and aggressive, and you just want to just throw all the pawns at the opponent, and then bring out your knights, take the center with all 4 pawns, give it a shot. I've played it in Blitz. I would never play this over the board. But that's kind of, you know, like I said, your options are pretty limited with white in d4 positions. And the same can be said for c4 if you're an English player. If they go Dutch, you can try this crazy e4 idea and then, you know, just go for a position where their king is very open and g4, g5, aggressive pawn attacks. But if you want to be a Gambit player, you really should be an e4 player. And having said that, let's begin our study of the black pieces. Starting with the move e4. Actually, it's kind of funny. Even though with white you have a lot of options with e4, with black you don't have that many options. Everybody knows the Stafford Gambit at this point, and that's e4, e5. And now you rely on knight to f3. So in e4, e5 positions for black, your options are to play knight f6, knight e5, and then knight c6. That's a Stafford Gambit. I won't even begin to cover the theory there. I'll give you a little sneak peek, but definitely look at Eric Rosen's video. The point is, again, there's a lot of traps here. Potentially the trappiest beginner opening that exists. There is also a gambit against the Scotch. I believe this is the Blackmar-Diemer Gambit, and it's knight to d4. And the point is knight e5, queen g5. And if they go knight f7, then after here, 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 you win in 7 moves. So again, with black, the openings, the gambits are very dangerous for white if they misplay, but they're also very dangerous for black. Because if you're sacrificing material and you're already going second, then it's not good. You will probably end up in a losing position. Now, you also have what's called the Traxler counterattack, or the Traxler Gambit. It's when you allow the fried liver, and normally the move is d5, but you play bishop c5. And essentially, you are risking white playing knight takes f7, forking you for the stunning move bishop takes f2 check. And this is insanely dangerous against a prepared opponent. So the point is that after king f2, knight takes e4, now your queen joins the party. But black is actually losing here, if I'm not mistaken, if white plays king to g1. If white plays king to e3, then after queen h4, you can really have a rodeo, and most likely you'll just win. It's very easy here to go wrong. For example, d3 hangs mate in 2 with queen f4, king e2, and queen f2 checkmate. There's a lot of ways to go wrong here. To allow the fried liver with black, and again, you can look at all the mainline theory, the longer analysis somewhere on YouTube, but this is kind of more to pique your interest that you can allow the fried liver, and these options are out there. There's other gambits that are kind of terrible against knight f3. There's the Elephant Gambit, which is d5. I don't even want to look at this. And the Latvian Gambit with f5. Now, the Latvian Gambit is more or less refuted. I think if white knows what they're doing, you just straight up lose the game. But the point is that if they take this pawn, you push, and then you play knight f6 and d5 and c5. And if they play knight here, I believe you can play queen f6 or queen e7 or knight f6, if I'm not mistaken. Although knight f6 looks kind of incorrect. I don't know too much theory here, I'm not going to lie to you, even though I'm supposed to be the title player that knows everything. I saved these for last because I don't recommend them. I would recommend the Stafford, I would recommend the Traxler, I would recommend even the Blackmar-Diemer, as silly as it is. But those are your options after e4, e5. Now, there's really only one other gambit against e4, and it's called the Portuguese, and it's the Scandi. And then you play knight f6. And you're sort of relying on people to go, wait a second, they didn't take my pawn, so now I'm going to go c4. And then you can play c6 here. And again, it's kind of a reverse Danish. So if you've watched the earlier part with the white pieces, you know that this is the kind of Danish gambit. You play e5, bishop c5, bishop f5, and you overwhelm with your development, even at the cost of 1 pawn. But the point is that, again, you want them to take you, and you want to start developing, and you want them to hang on to their pawn. But again, here with white, I usually just play knight f3, and if black takes this with the pawn, with the knight, then I just play d4. And black is doing very well here. White is doing very well here. Black is doing fine here, but white isn't in any danger of losing the game. But you can play something called the Portuguese, which is when you play like bishop g4, and the best move here for white is f3. But there's a lot of traps here. If white just plays like this, you can get very, very aggressive. Like I said, c6 or even just takes, and queen d5. But this is not the same, firepower that we get. So I'm just kind of giving you the options, okay? Now against d4, things get very interesting. You have a lot of options. So first of all, I'm going to show you a checkmate in 8 moves. This is called the Englund Gambit, not the England Gambit, the Englund Gambit. And you play e5. Now, if white knows what they're doing, your position sucks, but let's look at how to win first. The point is that if they take, you play knight c6, knight to f3, and now you play queen e7, which just looks idiotic, but the point is that you want them to go here. A lot of London players will do this because they're used to putting their bishop here, and now they run into queen before check, hitting the bishop, the king, and the pawn, the trifecta fork. A lot of people here will realize that their queen can come forward, but they would rather bring the bishop back, and then you will take this pawn. And what you want for them to do is you want them to chase the queen like this, and this is losing. It's losing because you don't move your queen. You play bishop to b4. Now they cannot take your queen because they would be pinned to their own king. And a lot of people here will play queen d2. Because again, if they take this, you just take with the knight. You're attacking the rook, you're threatening knight takes c2. This is a completely lost position for white. So what they'll play is queen d2, take, and they'll think, oh good, I'm guarding this, everything's guarded, I'm good. And then you checkmate them on the 8th move of the game. That's literally mate, that's checkmate. So you can get some quick wins, but, you know, if they play knight c3 here, this is like +3 for white. This is basically refuting the gambit. You can still continue with bishop b4, and there's a variation that Amon Hambleton likes to play where he sacks a queen for 2 pieces and forces this. Again, I'm not going to actually sit here with a straight face and recommend a position where you're down a queen, but there's also just the very simple, and actually this is what I do with white. I just play knight c3. And then if they take back the pawn, I'll play, you know, f4 and then e4. So the queen will like move and I'll play e4. And white is just much better here. But if you want to give this a shot to go for the trap, you're more than welcome. In general, every gambit with black that's kind of tricky against d4 starts with e5. So you can play d4, d5. And against the queen's gambit, you can play the Albin counter gambit. There's a very nasty trap here. If they take like this, you're happy, you get your queen out. But then you plop the pawn into d4, and there's already ways that white can get a very bad position. So white can play the immediate e3. Now this is a blunder because you'll play bishop to b4 check. If they block, you will take the pawn, and they'll go, what? That guy's an idiot. I take this. Pawn keeps on going, and the king is now deflected from the queen. If the king goes to e2, take... but make a knight. You have to make a knight because it's a check. If you make a queen, they will take your queen and then they'll take your second queen. But since this is a check, take bishop to g4, boom. And the queen is lost. If you just played bishop g4 originally, white would play knight f3, and actually white is winning here. Straight up winning because white's up a piece. White is up a piece, but you take the knight, you make a knight, and then you play bishop to g4. So the Albin has this trap, but, you know, the point is really to just lock in that pawn and make it really difficult for white to develop their pieces. So e5. And e5 also against the Budapest. Sorry, not against the Budapest, but here, c4, e5. Very tricky. I actually have played this myself quite a bit in Blitz. There's d takes e5, knight g4. And here, if white plays, again, defending this pawn for dear life, you play knight c6, bishop f4, you give a check because you want to get very quick development. They can block with the knight. And there's one trap. If they go to d2, you play queen to e7, looking to regain this pawn. And if white plays a3, you have a very tricky knight takes e5. The point is that if they take your bishop, it's checkmate. If they take, there is this. Now, what if they realize that they're going to get mated and they play knight takes e5? That's fine. You have the second knight. But if they take this, you got to be very careful here. Don't just take, because they will win your bishop. Do the in-between move, bishop takes knight, queen takes, and this. Your position is completely fine here. You have no advantage, neither does white, but you tried. And you get an A for effort. But the Budapest Gambit is very tricky even beyond this. There's a lot of, very aggressive positions where you can kind of play queen e7 and then regain this pawn. And one of my favorite ideas in the Budapest you can try to use is after castles. Castles, you have this idea a5. And the point is to go rook a6, rook g6. In a lot of positions in the Budapest, you just go on a crazy kingside attack. And one of the reasons that I like it a lot is that it's actually not lost for black. It's not one of these gambits that's dead lost or something. If you just play it and they know what they're doing. Now, there's obviously the other gambits after c4. There's like the Banco Gambit, for example, c5, d5, b5. But this is a super theoretical battleground. It's very mainline, and if you're looking for a very serious weapon, you're a 2000 rated player, 1800 rated player, and you want to give this Banco Gambit a shot, you can, but it's going to require a lot of memorization. Again, the point is really to kind of get this sort of a position where black sacrifices the queenside pawns and has long-term compensation. It's one of the reasons I'm not covering it. And I gotta tell you guys, that's basically it. We looked at e4, we looked at d4, and if they play c4, one unique idea that you can try here is you can play the Smith-Morra Gambit in reverse. So you can play e5, and if they play something like g3, you can go d5, takes and c6. And you're getting a Smith-Morra Gambit, but in reverse. I mean, it's not good. The engine doesn't like it. But the point is that you're getting your pieces out to very active squares, and maybe you can create similar attacking patterns that you would get in a Smith-Morra Gambit as if you were playing against the Sicilian with the white pieces. So that's one thing. And there's also this gambit called the Danish Gambit, which is total crap, but whatever. I'll show it anyway. It's b5. And it's like the Banco Gambit, but it's an accelerated version, and you can play this in a variety of ways. I mean, you can play a6, but you can also just not do that. Put the bishop here, and then just take the center. So if white plays like knight f3, you can play like knight f6. But if white just plays normal moves, you're down a pawn. You don't really have much to show for it. So c4, b5 is kind of terrible. As far as knight f3 goes, let me back up. As far as knight f3 goes, there's something called the Hirschstrom Gambit with g5. And the point is this, and now you attack the, like this. You could give this a shot, see maybe you'll win a game like that. But if they go knight f3, you're happy, because then you can play like this and just take the whole center. But in general, these gambits are very silly. Knight f3, g5. But if you're looking for an interesting blitz line, then against knight f3, you can consider going g5. But in general, a lot of the gambits happen after e4 or e5 because that leads to a more open game. And you'll notice that even in d4 positions, e5, the central pawn break, was still involved because that opens up diagonals. It opens up the bishop. It opens up the queen. And in many cases, you can gambit and then open up the position in a way that's dangerous for the opponent and gets the opponent out of their comfort zone. That's basically it. I know this was a more, it's a bit of a longer video than I usually do, but let me know if you made it all the way to the end. I'm going to say a word. I'm going to say donkey. And you can tell me your favorite animal if you made it to the end of the video. And that's basically it. If you enjoy the way that I teach, I do sell openings courses, and I will be making strategy improvement courses depending on what level you are. That's all on the website. Link is in the description below. Not much else to say. If you enjoy the content on YouTube and you want to kind of get in touch with the Gotham community, I have a Discord server with almost 10,000 viewers, users, not viewers. You can also check that out below. Twitch and YouTube all hang out there, get games against each other, talk about food, sports, life, anything that's not chess. That's basically it for this video. So, hope you enjoyed again, and I'll see you in the next one.